Morning. So, if you are visiting with us, we are in the middle of the elder or shepherd selection process. And what that means is this is the second of two sermons that I'm giving on the topic of what does it mean to be an elder and what are the qualifications. Last week, we talked really more about the job, what it entails, and the work that you are involved with. And we finish with Hebrews 13:17. Obey your leaders, in this context, that's the elders or the shepherds, and submit to them, for they keep watch over your souls, as those who will give an account. Let them do this with joy and not with grief, for this would be unprofitable for you. There's two pieces to Hebrews 13:17. One is that when we have elders, our job is to make it easy on them to do that job. Because when we do that, it is a joy both for them and profitable for us. The other part of it is the first part, which is if you are going to be in the role of a shepherd or an elder of a congregation, you are a soul watcher. And of all the parts of being a human, I can think of no part more important than your soul. We have many doctors in this congregation who look over all different parts of you as a human. We have chiropractors that are taking care of your back and keeping it straight. We have dentists that are watching over your teeth. We have doctors for your brain. We have every single part of your body. You can find doctors who that's their focus. But who watches over your soul? That's what Hebrews 13 says. So the value of shepherds is huge, because now you have people who are specifically focused on the spiritual well-being of you. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing that we are in a position to say, we should consider adding to the three that we already have. But it is also a very grave and serious thing. And so we want to take it as such. But as you think of the idea of elders being soul watchers, what I want you to think about is that means that those shepherds, everything about the qualifications will ultimately come down to relationship. Because that's the job. The job is relationships. It's people. And so the qualities that you're going to look for in shepherds are going to be relational qualities of how do they connect with other people, how do they connect with God, and looking at how those relationships are going. Last week, I handed out a whole list of different qualifications for elders. And those qualifications can be found in two places, 1 Timothy chapter 3 and in Titus, which is a good reminder to me because Timothy and Titus, their job is my job. They're preachers. And their job was to talk about those qualities. So you can't really talk about being going through the elder selection process without talking about the qualities that the Holy Spirit told Timothy and Titus, hey, preachers, talk about these qualities. So that's what we're going to do. But when I handed that handout, you end up with this big, long list. And I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes when I have a list of things, especially if it's longer, that list can kind of blur into nothing. It can be too big. In fact, if I have a job and it has 27 steps to get that job done, a lot of times what you'll find is I just go, well, I guess that job's not getting done. I have to find some way to chunk it into smaller things so that I can look at, well, I can do this, and then you can kind of baby step your way through the process. That's my goal this morning, is to take all of those different qualities, and by the way, if you didn't get one of those handouts, we have more of those in the foyer, so you can take those home with you as well. But to put those into groupings that will help you to better understand the qualities within the context of relation. Because relationship is ultimately the job. And so I think when you look at all of these qualities, they all fit into how does this man interact with, and it's some group. So, for example, if we look at the shepherd and his family, we end up with these qualities. He is a husband of one wife. 1 Timothy chapter 3 and Titus 1. I'll give you the verse references for each of these. I'm not going to go to each of these verses, but certainly feel free to double check me. It is an open book test. But 1 Timothy chapter 3 and Titus chapter 1 both talk about him being the husband of one wife. I like to think of this in the most, this is one of the few times where I think the Greek really helps clarify it. If you were to read this in the literal Greek, it's a one-woman man. So it's not just a checkbox of like, how many marriages? It's a checkbox more along the lines of what kind of a guy is he? Is he a one-woman man? We have had presidents that were on paper only married to one woman, but we're not one-woman men. And if you are thinking of a blue president right now, or you're thinking of a red president, that's you getting political. Don't worry about it. I'm just saying, we know what it's like to have people who on paper, oh yeah, I've only got one wife. Yeah, but you got 17 girlfriends. He is a one-woman man. Is he that kind of a person? Is he a father of faithful children? This shows that his children are no longer babes, but they have grown up to the stage and point where they can begin choosing for themselves faith. Because each of us has to work out our own salvation with fear and trembling. And so has he shown himself to be not just one who, the third quality there, rules his own house well, not just a good manager of his house, but what sort of product is coming out of that home? Is he showing a pattern of having raised children who, as they grow up and come to the stage of life where they begin to make more and more decisions of their own, they say, yes, as for me, I will choose the Lord. I have seen him and been raised with him, and now I choose him for myself. And 1 Timothy chapter 3 gives a variety of qualities for his wife. Because as I mentioned last week, I'll mention again, there is no such thing as an elder existing within a vacuum. He will be the leader. But if you don't think his wife makes an impact on his life, if you don't think that the process of shepherding the flock will have an impact on her, you've got another thing coming. You're looking for a man who, in relationship to his family, is both a good leader and he's built a team. And that team has their eyes on what matters. They are a family that you would look at and you say, this is a role model for how I would like to be. I would like my kids to grow up like this. I would like to have a marriage like this. If I could have that kind of relationship, that this family, if my family could have that kind of a legacy, I would be happy with that. That's what you're looking for. So when you think of a shepherd in relationship to his own family, because what we're doing is we're taking and we're expanding by appointing him as an elder, we're expanding his reach. Because another word for the Eastland church, and we use it all the time, is the Eastland family. We're saying, you have done well with your nuclear family. Please help us with Jesus' family. And a man who has not been faithful in little will not be faithful in much. You don't say, well, he didn't do a really great job with just a couple. Let's give him more. That's not what you do. You see, as Jesus himself says, he who is faithful in little will be faithful in much. You're looking for that quality of a family. Looking for a husband and wife that are a team who serve the Lord together, are raising children to know the Lord together, children who are growing up and making the decision to follow the Lord themselves. And when you see that, you say, well, maybe this is the kind of man who could help us at Eastland. You also want to see his relationship with God. Is he a lover of what is good? There are points in life where good is not always the same as will give you the outcome you want. There are going to be times in life where doing the good thing will actually give you a negative outcome. Psalms talks about the man who is righteous and swears to his own hurt, meaning he makes an agreement and then later on figures out that agreement was not in his best interest, or he's going to get the short end of the stick. Well, if he's a businessman first, what does he do? Well, let's renegotiate terms. I'm not doing that. Everything's changed. Or is he a lover of what is good? Yes is yes. No is no. Is he the kind of person that cares about what's right just simply, purely because it's right? There is an unfortunate epidemic within mankind of people who are always asking, what's in it for me? If I do this, what's in it for me? And we would be foolish to think that it doesn't affect us as the Lord's people. But the reality is that God tells you to do things at times. We say, well, what's in it for you? What's in it for you is you get to do the right thing. And then you get to lay your head down on your pillow at night and say, I did what was good. Whoa, but all of these things are going to go wrong, or I'm going to lose friendships, or it's going to be hard, or people won't like me. Believe me, you do not want somebody who is an elder who's a politician. You don't want them putting their finger in the wind and going, which way are things going? You want them to be a lover of what's good. And along with that, you want them to be just. You want them to care about justice. Because there's going to be decisions that they'll have to make in the eldership that will have to be based off of what is just. And as soon as you do what is just, somebody's going to say, that's not fair, because what they really mean is, I didn't get what I wanted. And they've got to care about what's just. And we've got to trust that. So you're looking for a man with that quality. And that's about his relationship with God. It's more important than everything else. I tell young people all the time. In fact, I was just talking in the high school class. They were asking me about marriage. And I said, find yourself a spouse, and here's the rule. Both of you need to understand, I'll do anything for you, but I won't go to hell for you. I'll do anything for you, but I won't go to hell for you. I'll do a lot of other things, but I will not go to hell for you. The people that you're looking for are those who will choose God over everything, which means they're not self-willed. An automobile is a self-mobile car. We used to call them horseless carriages back in the day. Because it was a vehicle that didn't need any external thing to drive it. It just drove itself. You are not looking for a horseless carriage. When you are looking at men who are going to be shepherds, you want to look at the front of their carriage and say, that's God pulling. That is somebody driven, not self-willed, not by their own desires, not by their own wants, but by God. Now, as I go through these qualities, let me pause for just a second. I'm going to hit them very hard. If I do it right, you may at the end of this go, well, Scott has covered these well, and it means there's nobody qualified. Because when you begin to talk about these qualities in absolute, who's never self-willed? Who's always just? Who's always holy? Well, okay, yeah, that's not going to work, right? Because we are human beings and imperfect. The reason that you are a part of Jesus' church is because at some point you said, yeah, I'm broken, I need to be fixed. So I want you to understand I'm going to talk about the qualities as absolute, but you're not looking for somebody who's never made a mistake. In fact, to be not self-willed, if you were to ask them, why are you not self-willed? They'll say, because I've made mistakes. And when I ran the ship myself, when I did it my way, it never worked out. I needed Jesus. So don't make the mistake of saying, these men need to be perfect or they can't serve. Jesus picked imperfect men to be his apostles. If he can do that, we can pick imperfect men to be shepherds. But there's a balance there, right? And that's what I'm asking you to do, is to use wisdom and to look around for that balance. For those who you look at and you say, yes, they love what's good. Yes, they're just. Yes, they're not self-willed. Yes, they're holy, meaning they're set apart. They're sanctified. They've chosen to live a life for God and not for themselves. But I'm not looking for perfect person. We already have a chief shepherd who's perfect. We're looking for imperfect people who've committed their life to Jesus. The next is their relationship to Scripture. And if you're thinking, you're probably not, because you're very nice and not honorary at all, but if one of you is thinking, well, wait a second, Scott, relationships are between two living things. What do you mean the shepherd and Scripture? That's an object. You know what the Bible says? It is the living and active word. It is the living word. And so what is his relationship to it? Well, Titus says he should be one of sound doctrine. He's got to be able to, in fact, even rebuke in sound doctrine. So he's got to know what truth is. And he's got to be somebody who holds to the faithful word, which is a hard thing to do, because one of the problems that we run into with the living and active word of God that is a sword is that it discerns and it defies even the intention and thoughts of your heart. You know why a lot of times we don't read our Bible? Because when you read it, it makes you feel like you got to do something. That's a lot of the time why it sits on the shelf. Oh, I could read this novel, or I could read the Bible. Well, I read the novel and I'm entertained and it was fun. I read the Bible and I got to go do stuff. Novel it is. Like, this is what we do as people. Holding fast to the faithful word means that there's somebody who said, I know this thing's going to make me do stuff, but I'm going to go read it anyway. And I'm going to try and live it anyways. And I'm going to let it divide and discern the intents and the thoughts of my heart. I'm going to let it cut my heart. And then they've done that long enough. They've done that long enough through a word that we use, which is called diligence, that they're no longer a novice. Right? Because if you handle a sword, anybody can pick up a sword. I can pick it up and just kind of swing it around. But after about a minute and a half of somebody who is a novice swinging a sword, somebody loses an ear, or a toe, or a finger, or a whatever. But you put a sword into the hands of a skilled swordsman, and that guy can do something. He can be deft with it. Because here's the thing about being an elder. You have to swing the sword, but you have to swing it like a surgeon. A lot of times what happens with the novice is they don't swing it like a surgeon. They swing it like a double-handed axe, and they're just knocking stuff over. But elders have to be people who are able to cut when cutting needs to be done, but with gentleness trying to cut what needs to be cut off, but no more. You know, when I got a splinter in my finger, I was going to say one of my kids, but then I realized it's just really me. When I have a splinter in my finger, and Jenna comes at me with those tweezers, and then even worse, when she's like, the tweezers won't work, she's got to go for the needle. Oh, the needle. The whole time, I want the splinter out. I want it out. But I only want it out with as minimal pain as possible, right? You can't be a novice swinging a sword. We want men that know how to do that. Because men who don't may have the best of intention, but the outcome will not be good. Then I want you to think about the relationship between him and himself. because that's another relationship. Paul talks about that relationship that he struggled with his whole life in Romans chapter 7, that the things he wanted to do, he didn't find himself doing, and the very things he wasn't supposed to do, he found himself doing those things. And he says, wretched man that I am, who will save me from this body of death? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ. So if the Apostle Paul can say, man, a lot of times I struggle with myself, and the things that I wanted to do, I didn't do, and the things that I shouldn't do, I did do. Again, not looking for perfect people, but on the other hand, we are looking for men with self-control. And so there are some characteristics that match that. Without the love of money. Money is a very powerful motivator. It always has been, because money is just a measure of the stuff you can buy with it. And so money allows you to take bigger vacations, to have more enjoyable experiences, to have more comfortable homes. You see that boat out there and you think that could be mine. What's keeping you from it? Money. Money can be a massive motivator. And in a very to be candid about it, one very real thing to consider is every Sunday we take up a collection, and that's a lot of money. I mean, we don't talk about that too much because preachers like me don't want to get all caught up in the money thing because that's the televangelist job. But there's a reality, there's a lot of money that will flow past the hands of the eldership and decisions that have to be made with that money. And they can't say, well, we'll not spend it at all because that's bad stewardship. But you can't also just say, we'll just go to Tahiti. Where are the elders? Oh, they're in Tahiti again. No, right? They can't have a love of money because they've got to handle money that's not their money. And they've got to make decisions with that money that is not about what's best for them, but what is best for the Lord's church. Not given to wine. These must be men who are sober. They must be men that you think of in the capacity of, they are not down at the bar. These are men that are sober-minded men. They're modest. Modest is not just an apparel thing, but it has to do with this idea of being situated rightly in a circumstance. They don't always have to be the center of attention. It isn't always about them. They are happy to fill the need that is there. Their ego is not the driving force. And they're temperate. Temperate has, an easy way to think of temperate is to compare it to another word that sounds a lot like it, temperature, right? Temperate means that you're baby bear temperature, right? Not too hot, not too cold, but just right. That's temperate. They don't have a temper that flies off the handle. They also are not so apathetic that, just let everybody do whatever they want. That's not leadership either. You're looking for somebody who's temperate, that understands the idea that their life has to be balanced and not out of balance. And so the way that they live shows a level of balance there. Thoughtful. The shepherd then and the community. This is one, in fact, the second one here, good testimony from them that are without, I find to be one of the hardest qualifications personally to see whether a man is qualified in that area. Because I don't see the average Christian out in the community every day. I'm living my life and you're living your life. And so a lot of times it's hard to tell that quality. And by the way, if you don't know on some, that's okay. I would argue that it's in your best interest to give the benefit of the doubt. If a man meets all of these different qualities and then you're saying, but I don't know if he has a good testimony from them that are without. Well, if he met all the other ones, I'm pretty sure I could tell you how he's going to fall on that one. But I'll also give you a story with that. There was an elder in a congregation that I preached for, and he worked at Boeing. And so it's a big manufacturing plant for airplanes. And one day into services came a guy that also worked for Boeing. He'd just come in off the street, had seen our sign, decided to come in. Well, as he was there, I was talking with him, and this elder walked by, and he goes, "Is that?" And I said, "Well, yeah. Do you know him?" And he goes, "Well, yeah, he's quality control. He's kind of my boss. He's the one, if I don't do the rivets right, if the plane's wing's going to rip off, he's got to tell me." I go, "Oh." He goes, and there was just a slight pause for him. And he said, "You know, all the men I've ever had to work for, he's been one of the most kind and fair I've ever dealt with." Good testimony from them that are without. They're not one person on Sunday morning and another the rest of the week. The shepherd and his adversary. This is a hard one because nobody likes conflict. Okay, some people like conflict, but we don't like the people that like conflict. Maybe I should put it that way. No good person likes conflict. But it is a part of life. And not everybody's always going to like you. And there will even be times where your friends might oppose you because they have a different view on something than you. And so in that moment, they're your adversary. So it's conflict that we're talking about. What does this man do when somebody disagrees with him? Is he patient? Is he gentle? Patient means he's going to keep his ears open longer than his mouth. Gentle means that even if he has to disagree, he's going to disagree with that surgeon's touch. Right? He's going to try and minimize the conflict, emphasize the love. He's not a striker or a brawler. He's going to lean into the fight. He'll do it if he has to, but he doesn't enjoy the process. He's not somebody who's itching for a fight. He's not contentious. And then last, he's sensible. Because some of the time when you have adversaries, you have somebody who disagrees with you. You know why they disagree with you? Because they're right and you're wrong. I know we forget that sometimes, but sometimes when people disagree with you, the reason that there's an adversarial relationship there is because you were wrong and they were right. And if you're sensible, you're patient, you're gentle, and you're not quick to fight, at some point in the conversation you might go, I think they're right and I'm wrong. That's a sensible way of thinking. They recognize that they do not have all the answers all the time. That's a part of good leadership. And so as we look at men, that's what you're looking for. Are they men that are willing to be sensible about things, or do they always push their agenda through? Because I'll tell you what, this is for those of you who know D. Bowman, great preacher, what a blessing in my life. But one of his old sayings was, cowboys drive the herd, and shepherds lead the flock. Shepherds, not cowboys. And then from there we look at the shepherd and Christ's church. And I use that language specifically. It's not their church. It's not our church. It's Jesus' church. And so when we look at the idea of the shepherd and the church, is that how he treats it? Because the very first qualification 1 Timothy chapter 3 brings up is that the work he's desiring is a noble task. What makes it noble is that it's not his church, it's Jesus's. Anybody can lead their own organization. Go start a company, become a CEO. But the nobility to the task of the church and shepherding the church is that it's not your people. It's his. And so do you see that? Is he given to hospitality? By the way, it's going to probably go back to a lot with his wife, too. Right? That family dynamic. It's hard to be given to hospitality if you're not all in as a family. Does he care about people? Does he want to do things with them? Does he pull alongside them? Is he apt to teach? Apt combines two characteristics, ability and desire. If I have the ability to teach but I don't want to, I'm not apt. If I want to teach but I don't have the ability, I'm not apt. I need both of those two things combined. He's apt to teach. That does not mean he needs to be up here in the pulpit. Teaching happens in a lot of different forums. But he does have to have the ability, and he does have to have the desire. He needs to be able to exhort, meaning to find that thread within people's hearts to pull on to help them become the best version. Because exhortation is this idea of saying, you're here, you need to be here. How do I get you to want it? How do I get you to want to do that? And again, he has to have the ability to do that, which means to some degree he's going to have to be a people person. Now that doesn't mean he has to be some crazy, extroverted all the time person. Not that all extroverted people are crazy. I'm realizing right now. I just got to backpedal that a little bit. But he doesn't have to be wildly on that far end of the extroverted spectrum. But he does have to care about people. And by the way, introverts can care about people too. They tend to do it in smaller groups and with less parades. But either way, you're going to have to care. Because the way you exhort people is getting to their heart and caring about their heart and helping them to get from where they are to where they want to be. When I think about exhorting, one of the things that I think about is how Jesus gives us the pattern that a smoking wick you don't put out. And we all know what a smoking wick is. You've had a candle. You've lit one before. And it's just that little bit of ember and that smoke coming up. It's basically dying. You're looking for somebody who says, I see something still alive there. Can we care for it? Not we're done. And last, able to convict. Shepherds are there to take care of the sheep when they are sick, when they wander away, when they're having a hard day, but they're also there to take care of the lion and the bear. They're also there to take care of the wolf, and the wolf that is disguised in sheep's clothing. They carry their staff as a weapon as well. These must be men who care about truth and are willing to state things as conviction. So as we look and we consider men for this position, again, I'm asking you to walk this balance. Don't look for perfect people. If you're looking for perfect people, you're not going to find them. There's one perfect person who's ever walked this earth. His name is Jesus Christ, and he gets to be chief shepherd. But we're looking for men who have shown a commitment to these character traits over time. And then we are asking them to help us do the work here that is Jesus' work. So, here's how we're going to finish up. We're going to have an invitation song, but after that invitation song, there will be a handout given to you because we're fond of handouts right now, and that's what we're doing. Just roll with it, okay? And on that handout, there's going to be a lot of writing, and I want you to read that writing. That's your first task. Read it. But then on there will be 4 questions. 3 of those questions pertain to the elder selection process right now. But we also have a 4th one that's on there. And this one question pertains to the future. And looking at the idea of, are there men that you look at and hope and see the trajectory of their lives that in the next 5, 10 years you think they could be serving too? And the reason we have that is because here on this earth, we don't get to set it and forget. The eldership is a constantly dynamic thing. And if there's anything we learn from the Old Testament, it's that whenever it says, and then a generation arose, it's rarely a good thing. Because what's going to come next is a generation arose that didn't know God, didn't do the right thing, because the generation before didn't prepare them for it. So one of the things we think about is not just elders now, but thinking about it for the future and that legacy. And so at this time, we are going to have an invitation song. After the invitation song, there will be the handouts and then some closing announcements by the elders. Okay, so here's where I pivot to an invitation that has nothing to do with what I just preached. Right? So just wiggle your brain for a second and understand we're going to sing a song. But every time we get together, we try and do this, and I think it's worthwhile. Because every time we get together, we should remind ourselves that if you are not on the road you ought to be on, don't wait till tomorrow. Don't wait till next week. Don't procrastinate. If you are not yet a Christian, all the hope, all the blessings of having Jesus as the chief shepherd, they're not yours yet. You don't belong to him yet. But you could. So if you are ready to obey him, to let him lead you, to submit to him, to be baptized today, come forward, let us know that that's your desire.